Well, with a settlement video documentary, your target audience is the people representing the defense in a personal injury case. They don't want to watch your video. In fact, a part of their job is to pick apart your video and to try to find mistakes in your video and try to find any issues they can with the story you're trying to tell. So as the editor, you got to be on it. You got to be aware of that challenge and have an understanding for what it is that they're actually looking for.
Today, I'm excited to have Bobby Craig as my guest. And Bobby is the CEO and founder of Impact Video. He has extensive experience in videography. He is a graduate from IUPUI, or Indiana University, Purdue University at Indianapolis. Even before he graduated, he actually started the video business and has been going strong since then. This is After the Crash. I'm attorney Dave Craig, managing partner and one of the founders of the law firm of Craig, Kelley Faultless. I've represented people who have been seriously injured or who have had a family member killed in a semi or other big truck wreck for over 30 years. Following the wreck, their lives are chaos. Often they don't even know enough about the process to ask the right questions. It is my goal to empower you by providing you with the information you need to protect yourself and your family. In each and every episode, I will interview top experts and professionals that are involved in truck wreck cases. This is After the Crash. Bobby has extensive experience in videography. He's also my son. He's my youngest of 3 kids. But as anybody that knows me knows, I wouldn't use him, even though he is my son, if he wasn't really good at what he does. And I can honestly say he's one of the best in the industry. So I'm honored to have him. It's exciting for me to be able to interview him today. Bobby, welcome.
Thanks for having me on. Very excited. You know, I edit these podcast episodes, so I pretty much watch every single episode all the way through, like 4 or 5 times each. So I think that makes me the biggest fan of the show.
And so today, what I want to talk about is settlement videos, because, again, my role or my goal in putting this podcast together, as you know, is to provide information to potential clients or to people out there who maybe have other lawyers, but they don't really know the process. They don't know what's going on. They don't know as a friend of mine says, they don't know what they don't know. And so we want to provide information so that they can make informed decisions, and so they can at least understand the process and they can understand what's happening. So that's why I want to talk today about settlement videos. It's something that I've used for over 20 years, even before you went into the business. I was doing settlement videos, and I found that they were very effective. So tell us a little bit about, first of all, what is a settlement video?
Yeah, so settlement video it's basically just a miniature documentary about a personal injury case. Try to keep it around 10 to 12 minutes long. And what it does is it tells the story of the client involved in that case. More importantly, it tells the side of the story that's not really being heard by the other side. So what we do is we bring in people to interview that knew the client before and after their injury, that can really give a good insight on how their life has changed after a wreck or whatever happened to cause their injury. Settlement video is basically used as a tool by the plaintiff side to educate the defense on things they might not know about or need to know more in depth about, to help them try to properly evaluate a case and hopefully help get the case resolved.
Yeah, and I think, if somebody's listening to this and they have a case and it's a significant case, they know that their lawyers probably collected medical records and they've talked to the client, and the client's told them how the injuries have affected them. And a lot of lawyers just go in with that information and they bring the client to like a mediation or a settlement conference, and they then just talk to the other side and explain things and hand them pieces of paper. What I have found is that settlement videos are far more effective because it's a medium that is designed to be more persuasive. And it's something that is a lot more interesting to listen to than a lawyer, or more interesting than reading pieces of paper.
Yeah, it can definitely make a big difference in a case, especially in the cases where, medical record might not really reflect how an injury has affected their day-to-day life. See it a lot with traumatic brain injury cases. It's hard to evaluate a traumatic brain injury case because all you have is paperwork, and it's not a physical injury that you can see. There's no x-ray where you can see a broken bone. They're not in a wheelchair. It's mental. It's in their head. And that can sometimes be hard to evaluate until you start bringing people out that know them and see them every day and experience how have they changed at work, how has their life at home changed. So yeah, they can make a big difference.
So I've had the occasion to see some really good settlement videos like the ones you produce that are extraordinarily powerful, that I have had the mediators, the defense counsel, and the other folks involved tell me that it had an impact on them. It had an impact on how they looked at the case. I've also seen some settlement videos that aren't so good. There's a handful of companies that I trust to do settlement videos that I feel like can do an extraordinarily good job. And then there's a whole bunch of companies out there that I wouldn't use, who I have seen some work that other folks have done that I just would never use. So in your opinion, what do you think the difference between, what makes a good settlement video versus a bad settlement video?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to whether or not the video editor has an awareness of what it is they're actually making with one of these settlement videos, because they're so much different than any other type of video. With any type of video production, the big thing is know your target audience, right? How do you make something that's engaging for your target audience? How do you make something your target audience wants to watch? Well, with a settlement video documentary, your target audience is the people representing the defense in a personal injury case. They don't want to watch your video. In fact, a part of their job is to pick apart your video and to try to find mistakes in your video and try to find any issues they can with the story you're trying to tell. So as the editor, you got to be on it. You got to be aware of that challenge and have an understanding for what it is that they're actually looking for.
Let's talk briefly about music, because that's somewhat controversial. I know some really good settlement companies, video companies that actually use music. I know some that don't use music that are good companies. Then I've seen some other companies that do some videos that don't do a very good job, that do use music. That they use it inappropriately. But tell me a little bit, what's your feeling about the use of music in settlement videos?
Yeah, music can be a little tricky with the settlement video documentary. This isn't a normal documentary for a public audience to entertain. This is you're trying to be convincing while having credibility. So you don't want to make that background music way too dramatic for the case. If it's a very dramatic case, you can have music that reflects that. But you should be picking your music tracks based on what the story is, and it should assist the story. There's a big difference between having your video and putting music on to just try to make it as sad as possible, or just to try to make it more interesting, and actually utilizing music and having an understanding for how to use music in video to help assist the story rather than just putting on as an afterthought. So your music track for a broken arm case should not be the same track as you used in a wrongful death case. Because at the end of the day, my job is not to make the most dramatic video I can. My job is not to try to embellish the story. My job is to try to put the viewer as close as I can to the client's shoes as possible.
And I think that's a good thing. The way we try cases is you don't want to try to overreach. You don't embellish. That's the best way to lose a case. You just want to effectively tell the truth. You want to effectively tell your story. And that's kind of what you do with settlement videos, right?
Right. And I will say the collaborating with the attorney is a huge part of settlement videos. As soon as I get a new project for one of these settlement videos, the first thing I do is contact the attorney, because I need to know what is your angle that you're taking. What are the points of the story that are being disputed by the other side? What key points are you trying to get across in this video? Just how you can start to lose the effect of your video by making it too dramatic, you can also lose the effectiveness if you're putting too much emphasis on something that is not the main focus.
Well, I think that, and you made a good point that, understanding who we're doing this for. These folks that are on the other side on these, usually we use settlement videos on very significant cases, people who have lost a loved one or have suffered serious injuries. And so the adjusters that you're dealing with and the attorneys you're dealing with on the other side are seasoned. They're not young, or they're not right out of school. They're not inexperienced. These are the top defense lawyers. They are the top, claims people. And so they see and hear horrific cases day in and day out. And so they're a little bit numb to it, the process. And they're looking for, like you said, they're looking for holes, they're looking for problems, they're looking for issues, they're looking for something that's inaccurate in your videos. And the worst thing you can do is put on a video that overreaches or claims something that's not valid, because by doing that, you lose the focus of the video and they stop watching or listening. You lose credibility, and that's then the video is not effective. What you want to do, from my opinion, is that you want to build credibility with the audience. You want to build credibility with a seasoned attorney so that she or he pays attention to the entire video. Same way with their claims people. And so I agree with you. You do not want to overreach. You do not want to oversell. You don't want to claim anything that's not responsible. So if you're a client and you're listening to this video or this podcast, you want to make sure that your attorneys, that's why your attorneys shouldn't overreach. You don't want them. You don't want to. Sometimes I tell my clients that even though I do believe this injury is related, it's not that big of an injury. It's not the story. It's not what's affecting you going forward. It's not affecting you today. It's not that significant. Let's focus on the things that are significant. Let's focus on, why are we going forward with this case? Not on some small thing or small issue that maybe we would lose credibility by trying to claim.
Yeah, you definitely want to focus in on those key points. You don't want to veer off too much, or else you're going to start losing the effect. If you have a broken arm and a broken leg, but the broken arm is going to make a pretty good recovery and doesn't really affect your life very much, but the broken leg has made you have to switch jobs and can't play in the yard with your kids anymore. And it's affected your life and it's never going to fully heal. That's the focus of the story. You might not even bring up the arm. You just want to focus in on your main story points. And again, you don't want to veer too far off.
And I was, somebody was watching one of your settlement videos recently, and they said that, boy, you really get it. You understand, you really understand what needs to be done. You really understand the storytelling part of it, but you also understand the injury world. You understand, our clients. You understand what they're going through, and that shows in the videos that you do. And the person actually said to me that, but you have an advantage because you grew up in a household where all I do is this type of work. What impact, if any, do you think it has that growing up as the son of a personal injury lawyer? What do you think? Do you think that has helped, or has that been
I think it's helped. Pretty much grew up surrounded by law. My dad's an attorney. My brother and sister are both attorneys at Kelley Faultless now. My mom's always worked at the office. When I was in high school, I was a courier running errands for the office. Legal world has pretty much been embedded in my brain since a young age. I remember when we were little and you would take all the kids out to eat, and you'd be breaking out the sugar packets and the salt shakers, and be setting them up like cars and showing all the kids your new case that you're trying to work on. Embedded in my brain. And then when I started doing video production, some of my first jobs were doing legal videos for you. Given they were much smaller cases back then, it kind of gave me an opportunity to learn from the ground up and to be trained at a young age of how to be able to actually do these. Because there's a big difference between learning how to make a settlement video and making a normal documentary for a larger public audience. I mean, it's its own specialty. And you can be an amazing storyteller and not quite be able to pull off a settlement video because you don't have an understanding for that legal side. And I've been lucky enough to grow up around it, so I am kind of used to it, and it is natural for me. If you come to me with a case and you want to take a certain angle, I already have an understanding of why it is that you're doing that and how I should reflect that in the video.
Yeah, and I think that it definitely shows. I mean, it shows that you kind of have a familiarity with what we do and how we do it and what's important. And so I think that the settlement videos have been a big game changer for our law firm. I mean, I can remember doing the first one, over 20 years ago, and we're using them more and more. I think that it's hard to justify not doing a settlement video. It really is. I mean, I have clients, they're not cheap, but at the same time, the impact is so significant, and it shows the other side, some of the people. It shows that we talked about the before after witnesses, and that's people that know what your condition was like before, or they know what it's like after, or they know what it's like both before and after, but you have a mixture of those type of people. And so if those people are persuasive, then the other lawyer, by seeing them, because usually when you do a settlement conference or mediation, those folks have not been deposed yet, those kind of witnesses. And so it gives the other side an opportunity to see how good your witnesses are. And jury trials are really won by witnesses. The lawyers are important, and a good lawyer makes a big difference, but you better, your witnesses are critical. And so if you've got strong witnesses, I want to show the other side, if you don't settle this case, then these are the people you're going to face in the courtroom. And so you capture these people telling their story about the impacts on my clients. And I think that's extraordinarily important. But another thing, and we haven't touched on it yet, but another part of the settlement videos often is the experts. We will actually pay the experts to be interviewed. And I'll interview, or Samantha, my daughter, who's an attorney here, she'll interview these doctors or these experts. And so between the two of us, we'll interview these people, and you'll put it in the video, and it shows the defense that our doctors, often our treating doctors or an IME, whatever it is, independent medical exam, they can explain the injuries. How effective do you think that is, having the doctors involved in your settlement videos?
Very effective. Having a doctor in your settlement video adds a lot of credibility. You're bringing in family members, coworkers, friends, people that know the client well, talking about their injuries and how it's affected their life. Then you bring in that doctor to kind of back up those statements. It just adds a lot of credibility to your video, and also it can help move a story along, or tell a story in a more efficient way. You see a lot with traumatic brain injury cases. I reference these a lot because they are some of the more difficult cases to make a video for, but can also be the most helpful. For traumatic brain injury case is not a visual injury that you can see. You can't hold up an x-ray and look at a broken bone. They're not in a wheelchair. It's a brain injury. And sometimes people, even if they're really close, they're a family member and they live with them, they still have a very hard time summing up in words how it's actually affected them. You hear the same line over and over again with traumatic brain injury cases of, I don't know, they're just different. Or I can't quite explain it, they're just not the same person. And that's not too helpful for a settlement video when you're trying to get into specifics. And that's when bringing in a doctor can be extremely beneficial, to kind of break down the specifics of how are they going to be affected moving forward? How are they affected at their job? Those kind of things. So extremely, extremely helpful.
And oftentimes clients may not, I mean, we don't always interview the clients in our settlement videos. And sometimes clients may, somebody's watching this or listening to this may sit there and go, wow, I wonder why my lawyer didn't include me in the video. Why don't you touch base on the, do you usually include the clients? And if not, why?
Usually I don't include the clients in a settlement video. I mean, first off, they're going through the worst time of their entire life. If somebody's been in a very traumatic car accident, the last thing you want to do is force them to sit down and go into great depth about it in an interview. You don't really want to make them go through that again. So I have before, but it's only if they volunteer to be in it and it's critical to the story to include them. It really comes down to, it's just more effective storytelling to have someone else talk about their injuries rather than have them talk about their own injuries. So I have included them, but when I have, they're giving background info, before the injury. They're never talking about their actual injuries themselves.
And I agree. I think it depends. Again, the purpose of the settlement video is to try to provide information to the decision makers on the other side, to the defense lawyer and their claims people, or the trucking company, claims manager or the insurance company. And oftentimes when your own client is talking about their own problems, they kind of they discount it because that person is asking for money. And so, but when you have a doctor, a coworker, somebody from church, somebody who they live next to, when they tell it, obviously it's far more credible to the other side. Now, that doesn't mean your client's story is not credible, but to the defense side, when they're looking at it, they want to hear from other people. And so oftentimes, we won't use our clients to talk about it. And I tell you another thing, which I learned, this was your great grandmother, my grandmother. I tell a story often to my clients, and I say, one time at Christmas, we were at my mom and dad's house, and my grandma was sitting on the steps, and in the kitchen, they were saying, hey, we're going to play cards. Dave, do you want to play cards? And I said, sure. And I was going around past the staircase to get into the kitchen to play cards. And I happened to pass my grandma, and I just quickly said, Granny, how you doing? Well, that with my grandma, that wasn't the best thing to do. So my grandma went on to tell me all of her problems. And, they kept saying, Dave, are you coming? Are you coming? Are you coming? I'm like, yeah, I'm coming, just a second. And so I listened to my grandma because I didn't want to be rude. And she went on. And they kept yelling at me. And eventually she finished. And then I went in and played cards. About 2 weeks later, I was with my best friend, and we were sitting together. And he said, guys, Dave, I'm sorry to hear about your grandma. I'm like, what's wrong with my grandma? And he starts to tell me all this stuff. And I said, how do you know? You don't know my grandma that well. You don't hang out with my grandma. How do you know something's wrong with my grandma? And he said, well, my mom told me. I said, well, your mom doesn't hang out with my grandma. So how does your mom know? And he said, well, my mom goes to the same hairdresser that your grandma goes to. And your grandma told the hairdresser told my mom told me. And I thought the story had more impact. It wasn't anything different than what my grandma told me that day sitting on the step. But the story had more impact coming from someone else who heard it from someone else, who heard it from somebody else, than it did from the person themselves. And I think that's human nature. I think people, when we're telling about our own problems, people look at us as a complainer. They look at it as, so when I try a case, my clients don't get on the stand and talk about their own problems. We let other people tell the story, not the clients. And I think that's what you do with these videos as well.
Yeah, right. And like I said earlier, you don't want to give your audience any reason to start questioning your video. If your clients in the video talking about their own injuries, they might think, is the client exaggerating? Are they lying about their injuries? When in reality, most of the time, the clients actually downplay their injuries. But I think the same thing actually applies to B-roll footage. if you have a case where a client really struggles to get up a set of stairs in their house, I wouldn't shoot video of them going up the stairs. I think a lot of people do that with their settlement videos. I think it's kind of mean, right? Because it causes them pain to go up and down stairs. So why do we have to send them up and down stairs? But also, if a defense lawyer is watching that, they're not going to be able to help but to think, this person knows they're on camera. Are they exaggerating their limp or exaggerating how difficult it is to go up and down these stairs? I would much rather show, video of the stairs without the client in their house, a ramp they had to build going up into their front steps, the living room that they had to completely rearrange to be able to put a bed in there because they couldn't make it up the stairs to get to their bed. I would much rather have video of that stuff without the client in it than to start raising questions by putting the client in there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I know in this day and age, using the right equipment, having the right lighting, the right sound, the right cameras, all those things are important. And so obviously there's an investment in equipment and technology, and then I assume you have to have editing software and, how much time, there's obviously a lot involved in producing a high quality settlement video. So kind of what kind of time frame does something like this take?
Yeah, so as far as time frame goes, the main thing I try to use to estimate how long a project will take is just how many interviews are we doing. For a bigger case, if you're doing 7 to 8 interviews, each being an hour long, that's obviously going to take longer to edit than a video with 3 interviews. If I had to put a time on it, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks after all the assets are gathered. The assets being, all the interviews are done. Yeah, you're getting all the photographs, B-roll footage, X-rays, medical illustrations, security camera footage, 911 calls, police body cam footage, all of that. You have all that 2 to 3 weeks. Obviously, it depends on, the case. What story are you telling? What all is going to be involved? But the most important thing is making sure you have enough time to get a draft of that video done and be able to send it to the attorney to see if they have any changes, and then have time to be able to put those changes into place. Because, again, the most important thing is that collaboration with the attorney and being able to put in, exactly what they need. Going back to the equipment and quality part of your question, obviously you want to strive to have the highest quality video you can make. That being said, a high quality video is much more than just what kind of equipment do you have. You can have the highest quality, most expensive camera in the world and yet make a low quality edit. These settlement videos are so reliant on a good edit and good storytelling, and I think we got amazing proof of that during the pandemic. Right? You can see some of my equipment back here. I didn't get to use any of that. Right? Because the quality of the video became completely reliant on how good of a webcam does the person you're interviewing have, and how good is their microphone. So there's a lot of control losses. Videographer's worst nightmare. You don't get to use all your equipment, but it forces good editing. I had 2 of the best results from settlement videos during the pandemic because they were great stories. And I think that says a lot, because I wasn't able to go out there and shoot high quality footage. I wasn't out to be able to take out the drone and get great B-roll shots and, the camera stabilizer back there. It's all about the storytelling. I would rather have a effective video shot with a cell phone than, ineffective video shot with thousands of dollars worth of equipment.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk briefly about, what clients can do to help their lawyers produce a high quality video. I assume that they need to to give lawyers names of people who they know that know how they're affected. But in addition to that, I assume you talked a little about B-roll footage. I'm not sure everybody understands what that is, but and also you mentioned photographs and you mentioned some other things. I mean, for us to do an effective video, tell us a little bit about what the people and their families need to do.
All right. So like you said, providing names of family, friends, coworkers, anyone that knows the client well and can provide some insight on how their lives changed is very important. Also providing photographs. I mean, the more photographs, the better. And that's accident photos, injury photos, but also family photos. This is basically a documentary and you're telling a story. So you want visuals to show during the video that can kind of give context. And not only can it give it more context, but it can also emphasize a point more or reveal more information. I know I did a video once where we went out and interviewed a client's family and friends, and all anyone could talk about was how incredible their garden was and, how passionate they were about gardening. Well, I've never gardened before, and, I was picturing just like a flower bed. They're really passionate about their flower bed. That's what I was thinking. It wasn't until the client sent over a photograph to use in the video that I got a real understanding for what it actually was. I mean, this was, the entire front yard and massive backyard full of flowers and vegetables. And like, this is not just a little hobby. This was an every single day thing that even a crew of gardeners would struggle to keep up with. And this person was so passionate about it, they did it every single day and were able to keep up with it. It's really impressive. But I didn't get a full understanding of that until I actually got those photographs. And it was extremely helpful in the video to be able to show, what it was before, and then transition into showing. We went out and got B-roll footage of what it is now. You couldn't even tell, where it started and stopped because, they haven't been able to do it. Photographs, more the better. Extremely important, very helpful.
And I think, as a final thought, I'd like to let people know that are listening to this or watching it on YouTube that you've lived this. If you're the victim of a serious wreck or a semi-wreck, you've lived it. If you've lost a loved one or you suffer serious injuries, you're living it. And the story to you is, you can't escape. You can't escape it. But the other side, they don't live it. They're not seeing it day in and day out. And for them to evaluate a case, to properly evaluate it, it's up to your lawyers to provide the information they need to evaluate the case. And if you have really strong witnesses that know the effects that the injury or the death has had on you and your family, they can't evaluate that if they've never seen them. If you have a really strong doctor who believes in you, who wants to fight for you, and they have not deposed that doctor before the mediation or settlement conference, they cannot value it if they have not seen that doctor or heard that doctor. They need to see and feel the story, because that's how they value cases. They value cases based upon the significance of the injury and the impact it's had on you. And they ultimately are trying to decide, well, what would a jury do with this case? And you can't blame the defense and the trucking lawyers for undervaluing a case if you haven't provided them with the information they needed to properly evaluate. So sometimes we play these videos and maybe they don't have enough money at that time, but they go back and reevaluate it based on information we've given them. So the information we give them has to be accurate, has to be truthful, it has to be persuasive, and it has to be accurate. It has to inform them so that they can use that information to properly value your case. And if your lawyers or you are not providing them with this information, either in the best way to do it, in my opinion, is through the video. But if you're a lawyer and you are not properly giving to the other side the value then you can't really, the information they need to value it, and you can't really be upset with their numbers. You've got to give them the information for them to properly value the case. And the most effective tool I've seen in doing that is a settlement video. And not all settlement videos are created equal. Not all videographers and video companies are created equal. And I'm proud to say, that I'm very fortunate that your company is one of the best in the business. And I thank you for all you do for my clients and then all you do for our business.
Thanks. And I appreciate the opportunity. I love doing these settlement videos. I'm very passionate about telling these stories. The fact that I get to make videos that help make a positive difference in families' lives is, awesome and very unique. I don't know any other videographers that get to make videos that make such a direct impact on somebody's life. But also, I love the challenging aspect of it too. Like I said before, settlement videos for a videographer, one of the most challenging videos you can make. I love that challenge. I embrace that challenge with open arms. I think it's super fun. So again, thanks for the opportunity.
This is David Craig, and you've been listening to After the Crash. If you'd like more information about me or my law firm, please go to our website, ckflaw.com. Or if you'd like to talk to me, you can call 1-800-ASK-DAVID. If you would like a guide on what to do after a truck wreck, then pick up my book, Semi-Truck Wreck, a guide for victims and their families. This is available on Amazon, or you can download it for free on our website, ckflaw.com.